Today, we're once again talking about the CT scanning company, this company that is offering a service to search through sealed packs, boxes, and cases of trading cards and sports cards in order to find the hits, because they've come through and done an interview with the guys from Sports Card Madness, and it's honestly left me scratching my head. They've basically tried to distance themselves from the hanky-panky of the situation, from the unethical behavior of the situation, and I want to sort of talk through that with you all today, because I think it's an important thing to make a distinction on, and I really want to get your thoughts down below, because this is one of those things that we've touched on recently, could have huge ramifications for sealed wax and prices and the overall ethical nature of this hobby. And that could be me just saying too many big words, but we'll unpack that today. Now, if you're not sure what it is exactly I'm talking about, I've touched on it a couple of times in recent weeks. Basically, you've had some information come to light that has shown people using CT scanning machines in order to search through the sealed wax in order to find the hits. And we touched on when this first broke maybe a month ago that, this was a rumor around the hobby for a long time. You basically had people saying that this stuff was out there. People are scanning this sort of thing in order to find the hits. But, up until a few weeks ago, we really didn't have the proof. And in some cases, like we saw in the very first video, which I think is somewhere over here, you've got them actually searching through sealed cases of, flawless and finding logo men and stuff like that. So this is obviously quite scary and quite a big problem, because if you've had people doing this stuff for years, who knows how much wax they've dumped on people that don't contain any hits. And when you sort of sit back and think through, the whole loaded box argument with breakers, it's like, well, is this the reason why are breakers out there actually using this kind of thing in order to find the hits in the first place? Or is the person, doing this sort of thing, selling it to the breakers in the first place? And I think that's a high chance of happening. And I think it's a big problem, the fact that you can have a company now offering that as a service, which is what we touched on in the last week or so. A company is now, offering this for a fee, and they're basically going to tell you what's in there, and that then leaves the person who submitted it to go ahead and dump that onto somebody unsuspecting, which I think is a huge problem, and is, exactly the reason why I was excited to sort of see this interview from the guys from Sports Card Madness, because they interviewed Brad Kellis from Industrial Inspection, the company offering this as a service, and I was quite interested to see what was going to come from this. And unfortunately, I don't really think we got a whole lot of new information with this 40-minute interview. I think there was a little, snippet here and there, but for the most part, it was sort of what we expected based on what we can read on their website and based on what others have sort of shared through, forums and the like. But it was sort of good to hear from the horse's mouth directly. But one thing that I was a bit disappointed with was how they were trying to distance themselves from the issue at hand and from the ethical issue at hand. One of the things that Brad talked to, I think it was towards the end of the interview, was basically reading from a statement, essentially saying that, from an ethical perspective, they can't really control what people are going to do with the information once they provide it to them. I.e., once somebody sends in a pack, if Brad and his company tell them there's nothing in here, and that person then goes on to sell it to somebody else for a high premium, but not disclose that this service was used and not disclose that there was nothing in there, they can't really control that, and they can't really be taking responsibility for that, because people sort of are free to do what they want. But that's sort of where I draw a line, in my opinion, because you as a company should be drawing that line and basically saying to people, if you want to be using this kind of thing, you need to be disclosing it. And there's some ways that I think they could be going ahead and doing that. And I know many of you would agree with what this company is doing in that particular instance by saying, we can't control what you're doing. It's basically the same thing as the whole Kurt's Card Care situation, people cleaning cards and not disclosing it. But I think you have an obligation to protect, the community, protect the industry, to protect your name, your brand as a company. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And common sense would tell me that you'd be trying to make sure that people can't be deceived by something or somebody using this service. And that would mean that you'd maybe be stamping the product after you've scanned it, something that can't be removed. And that is something they briefly talked to in this video. And that's something that Brad and Industrial Inspection have said they're looking into. But from my perspective, you're already offering this as a service, right? You've already opened up the floodgates for people to sort of use this kind of thing and then take advantage of others. So you're sort of wanting to make sure that people don't get scammed or be deceived, and thinking through what are some ways you can add detection methods to it so people can know something was used or not. Well, then you should be doing that from the get-go. You shouldn't be doing it, half-assed and sort of letting things go open for the time being until you figure out how that actually works. It looks to me that they're trying to be first to market with something like this, and they're scared that if they're not going to have everything in place, i.e. detection methods and stamping things and things like that, then basically somebody else is going to come in and undercut them or be first to market, and then they've sort of lost that ground to make as much money as possible. Now, I could be wrong by saying that. That's just my opinion, but that's what it looks like to me when you've got somebody saying, well, we are thinking about the ethics, we are thinking about detection methods, we are thinking about ways we can sort of make sure people don't get deceived, but for the time being, we're going to open up the service. I don't like that, in my opinion, and I want to hear what you guys have to say down below, because I think it's just a bit piss poor, in my opinion. And these guys seem like great dudes, but at the same time, it's like, well, why would you not be putting things in place to protect others either? Now, one of the things that I thought was a bit interesting that I saw somebody comment, actually, they're talking about, being innovative, and they want to try and come down to new markets with this kind of technology, but then in the same breath say that this stuff has been happening for a long time. So how exactly are you being innovative if this stuff has already been happening for a long time? And that's come from their mouth directly. Maybe the innovative part is being first to market, but at the same sort of time, it's like, well, it's a bit contradictory, in my opinion. And I want to hear what, again, you guys have to say down below. Now, in terms of some of the new information that we sort of got from this interview, apart from some of those comments that I've just talked to, hearing from them directly, they actually shared with Nick from Sports Card Madness 2022 Topps Dynasty F1 card that you can clearly see is a Max Verstappen patch auto. Now, Nick says it's from 2023 Topps Dynasty. I'm fairly certain, like 99.99%, that this is from 2022, because this is what the patch autos look like in 2022. You can sort of see here that you can tell it's a Max Verstappen card because you can see the foiling and then also the 10 out of 10 that you sort of saw up there, which I think is pretty scary and does, in fact, show that this works. And this is exactly why Topps and Fanatics should be bloody scared with what's going on. Now, in terms of sort of what can happen next, what next steps are, I think, Fanatics and Topps need to be putting things in place immediately for some of these more expensive product in particular to make sure that this can't happen. And I'm not sure what that exactly looks like. One of the things they also talked to in the interview was detection methods and what things could be put inside packs to sort of make the scans not work, or maybe they can put some dye in there that changes color when radiation goes on it, all this other kind of stuff. Check it out. There's too much, technical mumbo jumbo in there for me. But I don't think that stuff is actively going to work. I think the easy answer for Topps is going to be making more redemptions. And that sucks, obviously. But I'm trying to scratch my head and think, well, what's a quick fire method to make sure this does not affect future product? And I think it's, adding in more redemptions, which sucks. But would you rather see that or see somebody get scammed by buying a box of cards and then getting burned? And you guys might say, well, this is really only worth it for the really expensive boxes. But, some collectors out there will buy one box of Topps Dynasty as an example, and that could be the one box they buy all year, and they look really forward to doing it. And who knows, maybe the one thing they've bought has been scanned by somebody, it hasn't been disclosed, and now they've got a dud card that has the technical director in there, whatever it is. I'm not sure if you guys watch F1 breaks, but they've got some really dodgy, athletes and technical directors within those that aren't even, worth collecting, or principals, whatever they're referred to, the guy that runs the team, basically. So you could have somebody getting stuck with a dud, and I'm rambling now, but you guys get what I'm trying to say. I just think it's the lesser of two evils. Do I want to see more redemptions? No, but do I want to see less people get scammed? Yes. So does that mean we have to add more redemptions until Topps and Fanatics can figure out how to actually block this kind of scanning? I just think it's a big problem, and goes back to what I said, a little bit earlier. You as a company want to sit there and talk about the ethics. That's all well and good. I can understand they've sort of fell into this and maybe don't truly understand the card hobby, or don't truly understand how big of a problem this actually is. And I think they did, in fact, talk to that within the interview. They sort of weren't aware that this was going to be a big problem like it currently is. But if that's sort of truly how you feel and you want to do the right thing, then I think you need to not offer the service for the time being until you've sort of come up with a method to make sure that people using it have to disclose it, and you can't have people out there getting deceived. And I can't recall if I mentioned it already in this one, but we definitely touched on it in the last video. The reason why you're probably not going to see something like that anytime soon is because these companies, the same thing with Kurt's Card Care, the same thing with these other kinds of similar services, is that people using it are trying to actively maximize the amount of money they can make. So, if they're going to send something in and they're basically going to get told there's nothing within there, they're not going to disclose it to somebody for the most part, because that then ruins their chance to make more money. And some people might, and those kinds of people deserve a pat on the back because they're doing the right thing. But the vast majority of people that are going to actively use this kind of thing are trying to do it in order to mitigate their risk. And the only way you can mitigate that risk is if you buy a bunch of product, you find the hits, and the stuff that doesn't have the hits, you can, sell and not disclose it because you can still sell it for top dollar. Then you rip open the stuff that has the hits, and then you can sell those hits and make extra money. Because they sort of know that the second you tell somebody, well, hang on a minute, we scan this thing with the industrial inspection, whatever the company is called, and there's actually no Charizard in this box, or there's actually no 1 of 1 in this box, actually has nothing in it. Here's the results you can sort of see for yourself. They know that box and that product is going to sell for dirt cheap, right? The lowest amount it could possibly sell for. Like whatever the other cards are worth, that's the maximum of what it can sell for. And that's going to eat into the profit of whatever they can make off the back of selling the hit. So it sort of cancels each other out in some capacity. Obviously, yes, the bigger hits will often sell for a crap ton of money. But again, you guys get where I'm going. I just think it's absurd that this is sort of happening and people are trying to downplay it and people are trying to cut these companies some slack. I think it's a big problem and something that we sort of need to see stop. And I'm all for people making money and I'm all for people trying to, feed their families and all that kind of stuff. But the downside to this just scares the shit out of me. I said that last time. I said at the start of this video too, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And it sucks that this could really help some people knowing what's in their boxes and all that kind of thing. But the downside is just way too big. I think you're going to see a lot more people scam the system with this kind of stuff than not. And, I've tried to find that Max Verstappen. I can bring it back up again. And that we saw in this little clip over here, but I've not been able to find it. I'm really hoping you guys can help me maybe see it within a break, because this box was clearly sent in by somebody. And if it was in fact a breaker, you've now got the smoking gun for them doing unethical behavior. Because if you find this get hit in a break, the first question you're going to ask them is, are you guys the original owners of this? Are you guys the ones who submitted it to this company? And if you're not, who did you buy this from? Because that person more than likely sent it in. And that could be a huge can of worms for this industry and could result in a lot of fraud cases basically being opened and being raised. Because this is one of those things, like I said a few times now, that scares the shit out of me, and it should honestly scare the shit out of you guys too. You guys have sat back in the last video and said, well, it's $75 to send a pack in, it's $15 to send a pack in, who knows what a case or a box is going to be. That's chump change for people that have deep pockets, that have the ability to move markets and manipulate markets. We're already seeing that stuff happen with cards in of itself. If you guys can't see this and understand and comprehend that you could have a lot of money being made off the back of this and a lot of people being scammed and burned, then I honestly cannot help you. So let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know if you checked out the interview. Like I said, I don't think there was a whole lot of new information within there. And one thing I should also add at the very end, I forgot to say this at the start, is they actually cut 10 minutes of the interview out. And I think Nick talks to that in the first minute or so of the interview. And it was basically down to the fact that the company themselves maybe didn't want that information disclosed. And from what Nick says in the intro as well, is that a lot of it was accusatory towards maybe certain breakers or something along those lines. I'm not exactly sure on the details because obviously it was cut out, which is a bit disappointing to sort of see. I understand why stuff like that needs to happen sometimes with these kinds of interviews, but they're basically getting grilled in the comments for that. And I think, you can understand why people feel that way. But for me, I can also understand why that stuff needs to be cut out. But I'm keen to hear what you guys have to say too. It's a bit disappointing that stuff maybe wasn't edited or included in some capacity to remove the exact accusatory pieces, because it sort of diminishes maybe the strength of the wider interview. And apologies, I'm losing my voice. I'm a bit sick at the moment, but I'm keen to hear what you guys have to say down below as always, and let me know your thoughts in particular for that 10 minutes being cut out, because it sort of left a bad taste in my mouth, and I'm sure I did it for a few others too, even though I can sort of understand why stuff like that needs to happen, in particular with these kinds of interviews. Anyway, I'm rambling. Let me know your thoughts down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Cheers.